Alright, welcome back to another Uptempo Basketball video. My name is Brian Hafferkamp. I'm the designer and creator of Uptempo Basketball. It's a game that came out a little less than a year ago, maybe 9 months or so. And what it is it's a medium play basketball game for the tabletop. So using cards and dice. Not a quick play game, but also not a full play kind of play-by-play part of the possession game. It is a play-by-play game, though. So you are having the regular amount of plays for each team. It's just that within the possession, a lot of the detail is lost within the possession itself, other than who scored the basket. Although you can include some things in if you want to homebrew it. So when you get the game, I just wanted to do a full tutorial that shows you everything that you get with the game. I realized that I haven't actually done that. Recently I realized that, so I want to make sure that everyone who purchases the game, I'm also going to be doing a write-up in Sports Sim magazine in the next month or two. It should be published, so I want to make sure that, with a little traction, that everybody knows how to play the game. So this is what your cards are going to look like. Now this is from the 1985-86 NBA season. We have several different seasons available, including a couple of ABA seasons from the 1970s. And so there's 82-83, 85-86, 89-90, 95-96, and then 99-2000. And then the most recent NBA season before this one that just finished up. So 2021-22, that season is also available if you want to play with players who are playing now. And then we have the two ABA seasons. So there's 71-72, and I believe it's 74-75. Yeah, I think it's 74-75, 73-74. So I think it's 74-75. So a couple of ABA seasons as well. Obviously fewer teams than in the NBA, but still all of the same statistics and the same gameplay that you would get. Actually, I think that some of the defense is missing out of the ABA, if I remember correctly. So let's just take a look at the cards. So you'll get sheets of 3 cards, and they're meant to be seen like this. So you have a team card, and then you have the individual players for each team, and then you can see, this is Boston's card here. So they're kind of longer than they are tall. You could fold them if you only wanted to use these team cards and sort of go what I call up tempo. Then you could simply either fold these back or just cut out the team cards, and you would have just the team cards. But for the most part, if you want to play the full game experience, you want to keep it all together. And you'll want to have it sort of laid out like this, where you can see the team card, and then you can see all of the different players as well. So each team comes with 10 players. These are the 10 players who had the most playing time for that particular season. You'll get the team name and colors. You can see here their win-loss record. This chart here is going to be sort of your main go-to chart for every single role. So everything is going to come off of this initial chart here. And these are basically just all of the different types of outcomes for a particular possession. And we can walk through those. We have a few statistics here that you're actually going to use in the game for gameplay. These statistics down here are just purely for reference. They don't have any bearing on gameplay, but the team's points per game, their offense and defensive rating, these are newer advanced statistics that have been applied to even older teams. And then we have our scoring runs chart, which will happen if we hit on a scoring run here. So that's your team card. And then for the players, you can see these are the starters and these are the bench players. You have your point guards, shooting guards, small forwards, power forwards, and centers. And Doc Rivers and Spud Webb is the backup in 85, 86. So it's Doc Rivers as the starter, You can see here there's a few different numbers. So under here is the player's defensive rating. That's how many percentage points off of the 2-point or 3-point percentage that Doc Rivers accounts for whenever he's guarding someone. So if he's guarding Dennis Johnson and Dennis Johnson takes a 2-point shot, instead of a 46.8, you subtract 3, so now it's a 43.8% chance. So a minus is good on defense, a plus is not a strong defender. It's actually, if he were being guarded by Randy Whitman, let's say Danny Ainge is being guarded by Randy Whitman, then instead of a 52% shooter, Danny Ainge becomes 52 plus 3, so a 55% shooter. So it increases his ability to make shots depending on who is guarding who. And you can see that even the bench players have a defensive rating as well. And I'll show you how we can decide who is in the game or who is the one that we're referencing, whether it's the bench or the starter. And you can see the difference between having Dominique guard you as opposed to Lorenzo Charles. So it's -2 for Dominique, and it's a +2 for Lorenzo Charles. So a little worse defender over here. We also have a few columns here. You can see there's a free throw, 2-point, and 3-point. Now these are going to be the columns that we reference. So if there's a free throw attempt, then we're going to be looking strictly at the free throw column for whichever player is taking the free throw. If we are taking a 2-point attempt, or it's an and-one, or it's a 2-point shot, a make, basically, an automatic make, then you're going to be looking at the 2-point column to find that out, and that would be on either side, whether it's a bench player or a starter. And then finally we have a 3-pointer. So if there's a 3-point attempt or a 3-point make, then you're going to reference the 3-point column. You can see that some players, Lorenzo Charles did not even take a 3-pointer, so he doesn't actually account or get accounted for in the 3-point, the percentage of 3-pointers taken for each player. So but you can see Cliff Livingston, he took a 3-pointer or 2 or 3 or 5, and he didn't make any of them. So if he takes a 3, it's going to be a 0% chance, unless he's being guarded by someone who is like a +2, right? So if Charles was being guarded by Orlando Woolridge, who is a +7, then he would have a 7% chance. So we'll just, it gives him a little bit of a chance if he's guarded by someone who doesn't have a negative number. Same here for John Koncak. He took some 3s, or he took a 3 and he didn't make it. Sometimes you'll see they only have one opportunity out of 100. So that's what this means. So he has one chance out of 100 to even take the shot, but if he does, he's most likely going to miss. Okay, so this last little part here is the player usage. So it tells you Doc Rivers was playing 56% of the time at the point guard position. So he got basically 56% of the minutes between all of these, or between these two players. So I add the minutes of these two players, and then I take the percentage of each player's minutes based on the total of the two. So between Doc Rivers and Spud Webb, let's say they together they played 1,000 minutes. Doc Rivers, if he played 560 of those 1,000, then he gets that 1-56 rating. So he basically played 56% of the time at the point guard position. And then Spud Webb played, whatever it is, 44% of the time. And so this determines the usage of the player. And you can see that each player has a different amount of usage. Dominique obviously played 90% of the time at small forward and was their best player. Kevin Willis, though, with Cliff Livingston, they split the time almost evenly, and Tree Rollins and John Koncak actually split the time basically evenly, 50-50. So you're actually going to get several opportunities for John Koncak to score or to be a part of the game or to play defense. So looking at that, you can see sort of roughly who are the star players, who are the ones who are on the floor all the time, and then you can see how that is going to flow with the game. So these two are going to wind up with roughly the same opportunities. Are they going to shoot at the same percentage? Basically 50% shooters. Neither of them are good three-point shooters, and Concac might wind up with a few less points than Tree Rollins because of his free throw percentage, but 60% is enough to still make some free throws as well. So that's a breakdown of the card. Every single card for every team is the same. You can see here there's a very famous 85-86 team for the Celtics, and you can see their numbers here. Now when we go here and we break down this sort of initial chart that we're going to use on every single roll, we have a scoring run. So basically we're going to take 2 D10 dice. That's all you need to play the game, really. So just 2 different color D10 dice. Choose which one is going to be, actually you don't even need to choose the first number. We're just going to take, you do need to choose which one is the first number. So which one's going to be the 10s and which ones is going to be the 1s. So let's say if we roll this, and this is our 10s, it would be a 63. So we have 100 chances here. We have 100 chances here. So you see it goes from 1 to 100. And so a 63 would be looking in this range, 58 to 97, and that would be a 2-pointer. If instead the green was the 10th place, it would be a 36, which would be a free throw attempt. So you can see that it's very different. So just choose which of your D10s is going to be the 10s place and which will be the 1s. 2 different colors is helpful. If you don't have that, you can simply roll 1. So that would be a 0 and a 3, and that would be actually a run. So you could roll 1 die, technically, and just roll for the 10s place first and the 1s place second. I'll also show you the online application and how you can use that to sort of speed up the game, because it gives you multiple rolls all at the same time. But just going through the basics, we're just going to use a couple of dice and to show you everything. So a scoring run is just like it is in basketball. So we have these scoring run cards, and they come with the game, and you can see that they correspond to these scoring runs here: 8-0, 9-2, 6-0, 10-2. So you can see that these are clearly marked. If you have an 8-0 run, you should be looking at this card here. But we have these scoring run cards, and what they do is they help you to distribute the points. If you are playing the individual players, they help you to distribute the points to the appropriate players. So let's say the team goes on an 8-0 run. You're keeping the points of all the players. So how did that 8-0 run happen? How can I distribute the points for that? You would simply roll, and whatever range it is, let's say it is a 36, then it would be in this row here. So it would be a 3-point field goal from the point guard. The shooting guard made 1 out of 2 free throws. The small forward didn't score. The power forward and the center each had a bucket, and so you would simply mark those off on for each player. And then you could go as far as trying to determine their usage. I typically just give it to the starters and move on with life that way. They're going to be getting the bulk of the points anyway, so that's typically how I distribute those. But you could roll to see which player. So the point guard hit a 3, and you could roll both dice and see. So a 96 would mean that Spud Webb got the 3. So you could do that as well if you wanted it to be a little bit more randomized. But I typically just go with the starters and give them those points. You can see here on a 9-2 run, there's actually a bucket from the power forward of the opposite team. So the team that scored on the scoring run had 9 points, but the opposite team, the opposition, had 2 during that 9-2 run. So those have to be distributed as well. So they're in the red. That's for the opposing team. If you see a 3, and then where's it at? Like you see a 3 with a made free throw, then that means that that's a 4-point play. So there's an opportunity, a couple of opportunities for 4-point plays in here, somewhere here on the 12-0 run. So the 12-0 run is pretty uncommon. There's only a 2% chance even after the at best 3% chance on the initial roll. So you got a 3% chance here, and then once you roll for those scoring runs, you only have a 2% chance at getting that 12-0 run. So it's quite uncommon. And these are cards, so you could cut these out and have them individually. So there are scoring runs in the game. That's part of basketball. Is everybody goes on a run. That used to always be the mantra, I guess, in the NBA. You're never out of it. Everybody goes on a run, and typically, if you hit 3, 4, or 5 of those scoring runs in a game, I mean, you're going to be in control of the game. But just because you're sort of out of a game doesn't necessarily mean that you're out of the game, because a 10-2 scoring run or a 10-2 and then a 6-0 scoring run can really change the outcome of the outcome of the game. TO is a turnover. FT attempt, so a free throw attempt. So then you would check again against who is shooting the free throws, and then what is their free throw percentage. You can see their free throw percentage underneath. And so this line includes their shooting percentage. So Randy Whitman, a 77% free throw shooter, a 53.4% 2-point percentage, and then 31.3% 3-point percentage. So you can see his actual shooting percentages, which is what we're using to roll against on each play. And then these numbers here represent their usage for each of those shot types. So how many of each shot type did they take? So Doc Rivers took 12% of the free throws on the team, but Kevin Willis took 11%. Dominique, obviously, what is that? Almost 30% of the free throws on the team went to Dominique Wilkins. So you can see their percentage. The higher the percentage, the greater the opportunity for them when you roll the dice, which means they're going to be around and about their percentage. When you get over to the bench, obviously these guys are going to be in the 3, 4, 5 to 10% range, depending on how much playing time they got. So on a free throw attempt, you would roll first against these numbers. So let's say it's a 0-4. That would be between 1 and 12. So it would be Doc Rivers taking the free throw. And then you would take the free throws at 60.8. A free throw attempt is considered 2 free throws. So you would take one. If it's a make or a miss, you take the next. So not a 1-and-1. 2-point attempt, you would roll to see which player, this time a 40, which would be Dominique Wilkins. So 22 to 51 would be Dominique taking the 2-point shot, and then his percentage here would be 47.9. So anything, you can round up if you want to 48, or you can take that. Some people roll 3. So you have the 10s, you have the 1s, and then you have the 10ths place as well. So I like to get super precise. So if it's the roll is 476, that's good. If it's 480, then it's no good. Okay, so anything from 1 to this number is good. It's a make. So anything 1 to 53 is a make. Anything 1 to 49 is going to be a make. If it's 50 or more, then that's a miss. So pretty easy to sort of figure that out on each play. For an AM1, that is the players put the ball into the basket and they got fouled. So they get 2 points automatically, and then you would figure out who's shooting the free throw. You can roll against the 2-point percentage. That's what I would do. I'd roll against the 2-point percentage to see who made the shot, and then use that player's free throw percentage to figure out, did they make the free throw. There is an actual 2-pointer, and when you see 2-point attempt, that means that you roll against their shooting percentage. If you just see 2-point, then that means that it's an automatic make, and then you just roll against this top number to see who made the basket. So on that one, it would be a 72. A 72 is going to be Spud Webb, so it'll be an automatic bucket for Spud Webb, and you don't have to roll against his shooting percentage when it's just the 2-point. If you see 3-point attempt, we do the same thing as a 2-point attempt. You're just going to roll against these top numbers to see who took the 3, and then you need to roll against his 3-point percentage. Again, if you're playing defense, then that will come into make some sort of slight defensive adjustment on the player's shooting percentage. And then if there's a 3-pointer, then that means it's an automatic 3. So if you roll 100 for my dice, that is 2 10s is 100. Maybe for your dice is 2 zeros. But it's 1 to 100, not 0 to 99. So you can figure that out how you want to. And 100 for them would be an automatic 3-pointer. You can see in the mid 80s, they weren't taking nearly as many threes. If I showed you the 2022 season, this number would be significantly higher. It'd be 15 to 20% is their total 3-point attempts and automatic makes. And I've tried to distribute that so that they don't make every single thing. But between their opportunities here, because a lot of guys these days shoot 35 to 45% from 3. So they're not shooting down in the 20s anymore if they're shooting 3s. So you have to sort of adjust these opportunities between the actual make, where there's no rolling for the attempt, and when you're rolling for an actual attempt. But here you can see it's 98 and 99 are an attempt, and then a 100 is going to be just the straight up 3-pointer made. Okay, so when you roll here, you figure out what you're doing for the play, and then you can, if you're using individual players, you can come here and you can begin to roll against to find out which player is involved in the play, or is involved in the shot, is involved in the defense, whatever it is. If you want to play what I call up-tempo style, you can use those same numbers. So we have the same shooting percentages, free throw, 2-point, and 3-pointer. We have those right here, but on a team level. So you can see that their team 3-point percentage is only 19.9%, which you could round to 20 if you wanted to, or round down to 19. But their free throw percentage is 72 or 73, 2-point percentage is 49, and 3-point percentage is 19. So instead of rolling against each individual and finding out which individual took the shot, you can simply keep track of the team points. This would be a way that you keep track of the team points, but it would not allow you to keep track of the individual's points. So if you want to have individual points, you can use them over here. If you just are trying to like blow through a game and maybe it's a game you don't care about, but you're trying to simulate in some way, simulate through the season, but you kind of want it to be realistic, you can just use this sort of team oriented way to play, where you use the free throw percentage and 2-point percentage, 3-point percentage. And there's even a defensive adjustment here. So as a team, their defense is a -1. And the way I figured this was their defensive rating against the average defensive rating of all teams for that particular season. It's the same way that I figured their defense here. So the defensive rating of the team is 105. That means they're one below the average, which would have been 106. 100 is it's on a scale of, oh gosh, what is it? It's how many points per 100 possessions, I believe, is the offensive rating. So typically they would give up 105 points per 100 possessions if that makes sense. It's a little convoluted to me with the advanced stats in basketball, but I'm trying to understand them better. So 106 points per 100 possessions is actually the average for this particular season. And then you can see that Doc Rivers is a -3, so he would be at 103 points. So if he played 100 defensive possessions, he would give up 103 points. So you can see kind of how that breaks down with each player. Randy Whitman would give up 109 points over 100 possessions. So same thing with the offensive rating. But you can use this defense and say, it's team defensive game. So when someone takes a 2-point shot, let's say the Celtics are taking a 2-point shot, we're going to subtract 1 from their 2-point percentage. So instead of 51.7, it'd be 50.7 would be their shooting percentage. So that way you can sort of include team defense. You can see here that they are 4 points below the average, which was 106 points per 100 possessions. So they're giving up less than a bucket per possession, essentially, is what they're doing. And so if the Hawks were taking a shot against the Celtics, that would be a -4. So instead of 49.7%, their shooting percentage goes down to 45.7%. So it's about that's a 4 percentage knockoff of their shooting percentage, which when you play the game feels about right when you're playing sort of over a length of time. Okay, so that is what we consider using the teams. That's what, if you ever hear me say going up tempo, then that's kind of what that initially meant. This was the original part of the game before adding in any individual players. This is sort of where I started with the game. And then eventually added in starters, and then somebody said, well, what if you want to have bench players as well? So we added in the bench players too. The last part here is the scoring run. So if you were to roll a 1-3 for the Hawks, same thing for the Celtics, but you can see here the Bulls are a 1. So the Bulls have a 1% chance. They do have a chance of hitting a scoring run, but it's only 1 out of 100. For these teams, who are obviously 67 wins is putting you in the upper echelon of teams of all time, and then 50 wins that's a solid playoff team. You're going to finish first, second, maybe third, but probably first or second in your division. So these are 2 good teams. This is a very bad team, 30 and 52. So they're probably at the bottom of their division for sure, and probably at the bottom of the NBA at this point. So if you have this, and they're playing like sans Michael Jordan, he got hurt that year. So, you see MJ on here, but he doesn't have very many opportunities because he got hurt pretty early in the season, I believe. So they have a 1% chance. So basically the way I break it up is the top third of NBA teams have a 1 to 3% chance. The middle third have a 1 to 2% chance. And then, or a 1 to 2 is their rating here. So 3% chance. The middle teams have 2% chance. The bottom teams have a 1% chance. And that's on every single roll. So their opportunity to go on a scoring run is pretty high, actually, for the game, but it's only 1% for each roll, or 2% or 3%. And there aren't as many as you think. You think, oh gosh, on every single roll, that seems like a lot. But consider that they alternate possessions, right? So really only half of the rolls go to one team or the other. And then also, again, it's only a 3% chance, and it's at the bottom of the rung. It's not, most of your opportunities are going to come from these, from free throws all the way down to 2-pointers. So that's going to be the sort of the meat and potatoes of your rolls, even though there's technically there's technically the same, what is it? I'm blanking on the word. There's technically the same chance. There's a 1 out of 100 chance that you're going to hit on that. But the reality is there is a little bit of a bell curve so that the plays in the middle are the ones that are going to come up the most. So if you roll a 1 to 3, then that team is going to go on a scoring run. And then you need to roll against this roll here, and that'll tell you what kind of scoring run that the team goes on. If you're only playing the team style, then you don't even have to worry about these cards here, because these cards are only to glean like who scored and how many points did they score during the scoring run. So let's say you hit a run and then you rolled a 55. So that falls into this range, 51 to 75. That's a 6-0 scoring run for the Hawks. And you would just simply mark off 6 for the Hawks, and then you would change possession. And there's also a clock movement that has to happen, so you subtract 2 minutes off the clock on a scoring run, because that's sort of an extended amount of time. It doesn't happen over 20 seconds. Nobody scores 6-0 runs in 20 seconds. So that 6-0 run happened over 2 minutes. That 8-0 run happened over 2 minutes or whatever. So you subtract 2 minutes from the clock, give the other team the possession, and then you continue to move forward with the game. Okay, so I think that's the breakdown of general gameplay. Let's bring in a few more components. So you're going to get all the teams, easy to cut out. There's one cut here, and then one cut for each team. You're going to get the scoring runs cards, and you're also going to get a clock. So if you want to manually keep time, then I've created this clock, and you can see the clock ticks down 20 seconds for each play. We have quarter 1, 2, 3, 4. We have an overtime, and basically, I like to use coins. So at the tip off, you would start everybody here and here. And then after the first play, you would take 20 seconds off, and after the next play, and so on. So you just keep going down. No timeouts or anything. You could homebrew that if you wanted to, and what a timeout might mean. I've had a difficult time sort of adjusting timeouts to football and basketball. Baseball obviously doesn't really have timeouts, so it's a little bit easier. But some games actually do timeouts, so if you want to bring that sort of system into the game, that would be fine. So this is the top part is the clock, and I think it's pretty straightforward. Once you get down to 0, then you would move it to the second quarter and then just start over again. So it's sort of a reusable clock. If you laminated this, you can mark it off with a Sharpie, or not a Sharpie, but a whiteboard marker that you could erase or whatever. And then the other part that we have down here is called, you can also time the game by possessions, or what we call pace. So in this way, you would do the same thing, quarter 1, but then you would have, after each possession, you would basically just move it over 1 to have the possessions work out correctly. So we would have 40 possessions per quarter. That would be 20 per team. And it does work out generally well to use pace or possessions. You can also figure those yourself. So let's say you want to do possessions, and you want to keep a little bit more realistic possessions or pace, based on pace. You can find the pace number for each team. You can see them here. And pace is basically how many possessions per game did this team average. That's really the meat and potatoes of pace. So if the Hawks were playing the Celtics, if you added both of these together, it'd be 201. And so between the two of them, there are going to be 201 possessions in the game. And if you divide that in half, that's essentially going to give you how many possessions does each team need to have in the game. So you just you could just number 1 through 100 on a piece of paper, and then just mark off every time a team goes through the possessions. Or you can mark off 1 to 100 for the first half, 1 to 100 for the second half, and you're just marking them off as they go through. And so with 200 total possessions, then each team, if you're just going back and forth, is going to wind up with 100 possessions. So that would be sort of your timer for the game. If you go back into older seasons or you play the ABA seasons, I mean, sometimes you wind up with teams with 106, 108 possessions in a game. So these two are averaging, they're averaging 114 points a game. So they have a little higher 3-point percentage. That could account for the higher number. They have a little bit better 2-point percentage. And then everybody has about the same number, about the same opportunity for 2-pointers. But you can see 15 to 34. They have a higher percentage, I think, here of 2-point makes. But then they also, 96 to 100, they have 4 or 5 opportunities for threes, as opposed to the Hawks, who only had 3 opportunities for threes. So the numbers do work out, the games do work out, where you get the flavor of each team. And once you see the numbers, you can kind of start to read, oh, okay, this is a better 3-point shooting team, or this is a better inside shooting team, or whatever. So if you want to play with pace, you would just use that off of each team card. If you want to just use the pace that's on here, you can do that. Your scores are going to vary because of scoring runs. That's really where your scores are going to get variable. It's going to get a little bit variable, but based on how good a shooting team each team is. And I'll tell you that from experience, using the team cards is fast, maybe 15 minutes for a game, or 20 minutes. But the detail and the statistics are going to bear themselves out better. Like the 96 Bulls, who won 70 games. They can get beaten more easily if you're just playing with the team cards than if you're playing with the individual player cards. So, especially if you're playing with defense, because the individual defenders are going to make a lot of difference over the course of all the shots that are taken in a game, more than the team defense is going to. So if you want that real impact and you find like, oh, it's not very realistic, the Bulls have lost 10 games out of 20. If you use the players, it's probably going to come out closer to what your expectations are than if you only use the team. But the teams are there, if you want to play it fast, if you want to sim it, if you want it to be sort of realistic, or you just don't have a lot of time and you just want to get through the NBA game while you're watching the playoffs or something, then that's nice and easy. It's easy to teach someone younger sort of how to play. And then once you get these concepts down, it's easy to sort of add them into the players. It just takes more time and more roles to make that happen. So it's not that playing with the individual players is harder. It's the same exact mechanics. It's just a little bit more time consuming because you have more roles to deal with. So these are 3 of the components that you get. And the 4th component is going to be a scorecard. So I made a score sheet or a scorecard. Feel free to bring in whatever score sheet that you want to play with this or to keep score. If you want to use Stratomatic or whatever you're comfortable with, you can. But I made this There's nothing particularly proprietary about it. Like you have to use this with this game. I just wanted to give this to gamers because maybe they don't have a score sheet, or maybe this is the first basketball game they're ever buying, and they don't just have a bunch of score sheets that they can print off or make copies of. So you have your teams up here. You obviously have your quarter totals. There's enough for an overtime a couple times. You can put the date of the game. There's a little bit of room here for notes. This is typically where I try to keep track of turnovers, just to see how many turnovers are happening in the game. You have your running score here, so 1 to 160, and it's for each team. You can put your team names here just to keep, this is one team and this is another team. There are 2 lines. You can either put the starter and the bench player, their names right above each other. I saw someone do this while they were testing the game, and they put the starter here and then indented and then put the bench player out to the right. So you could clearly see the bench players and the starters, which I thought was very clever, because sometimes you get a little confused going in there for each of the different players. And then each player has their own line here. This will be the totals, first quarter totals, if you are keeping, and this is generally going to be for points. So you're keeping the points for each quarter. And then you have total points over here that you can tally everything up. And it's the same for both teams. So very simple and basic score sheet, but works very well. As I played it, I've sort of developed it. So those are the main components that you're going to get with Uptempo Basketball. So hopefully that makes some sense to you. The final component that we have is going to be an application. Hopefully, trying to make sure you can see that without too much glare. So this is a mobile application that I created. Let's see if we can lighten that up a little bit. So this is a mobile application that I created. It works on any device, whether it's a mobile app or a mobile phone or a computer screen. So when you change the orientation, it doesn't change it enough here. Let's see. No, that's not what I want. Come on. Here we go. All right, so this is the this is what it looks like on the desktop. So you can see it kind of spreads out horizontally, but if we're looking at the mobile site, then you can see that it is more vertical. Okay, so a little bit easier to deal with this way. And there's different components here. We have obviously the logo. We have which quarter we're in. And because we just opened this up as a page, then we're in the first quarter. There's 12 minutes left in the game. And I'm not sure why. Okay, it should be blank. I think I must have accidentally touched one of the rolls. But the first, and it'll be helpful to explain it with the team cards here. I got a light right here, so I'm trying to keep the glare off. So this is your result roll. So we have our play results here, our play outcomes, and that's going to be the first number. And again, it's going to be just like rolling 2d10 dice. We're going to have our shooting or runs roll. So if this one was a run, then you would use the second roll to determine what run it was. Okay. Or if it's shooting. So let's say it's a 2-point attempt. You'll use this to figure out, okay, it was a 2-point attempt. Now I need to be looking at the 2-pointers, and I'll be using this number to look at the 2-point rolls. And then the last one says player. So then you can use this one. If you found who is shooting the 2-pointer, you can use this last one to determine what is the shooting percentage. Or if you're going off of here, there would simply be the results roll and then the shooting. So you would go off of this to determine Was it a make or a miss, right? So we have a few different roles, and you can kind of use them as you want to. And I'll show you just when you click roll, you can see that you get 3 different roles all at the same time. And this will significantly speed up the game for you if you use this, whether you use it on your monitor for your desktop or on a laptop off to the side, or you use it on a phone. I typically use it on a phone and just kind of keep it over to the side. But a couple things happen. We got 3 roles. They're all already parsed out for you with a tens and a ones place. The quarter has stayed the same, but you can see here that our time automatically, every time we hit roll, our time is automatically going to go down to down 20 seconds. So it keeps the time for you. That's a whole other piece of the game that you don't have to worry about, always moving the time down. If you like that kind of thing, use the manual clock. If you find yourself just being engrossed in the game, this will actually help you if you're forgetting to do the timer or the clock. So we have our 3 rolls. So the first roll is an 88. Let's say we're doing the Hawks. So an 88 is a 2-pointer. That's an automatically made 2-point basket. So we don't have to check to see did the person make it against their shooting percentage. And then next we want to find who the shooter was. So we have a 2-pointer. It's a 31. A 31 is going to be Dominique Wilkins because it's a 22 to a 51. 22 to 51, and we have a 31. So he is the one who makes the 2-point shot. And really, that's all that you need to do. On a 2-point make, there's no adjustment for defense. There's no anything, right? They just have made the basket. So these kind of help move the game along and to improve the flow as well. So then we just take another roll. I think I hit it twice. I hit it twice. So it actually went down 40 seconds here. So we're down to 11 minutes. 52 is the play. That's going to be a 2-point attempt. So again, we're going to be looking in the 2-point column. We have a 13, so that's going to be Randy Whitman taking a 2-point shot. And if you don't play with defense at all, you can go straight to the shooting percentage and just say the shooting percentage is 15. So anything 1 to 53 is going to be a make. So that would be a made shot for Randy Whitman. Now, if you're playing with defense, let's say he's being guarded by the starter on the other team, which is Danny Ainge. Ainge is a -2. Then you would subtract 2 and he'd become a 51% shooter. 15 is still far below that, so that's still a made shot, even though Ainge is a pretty good defender, so he makes the shot over Ainge. If you wanted to find out, was it Danny Ainge or Rick Carlisle who is taking the shot? So we have our 52 2-point attempt. The person shooting is a 13. That's Randy Whitman, the shooting guard. And then we can use this third dice combination down here to figure out which of these, was it the starter or the bench player. So a 15, and then we would look at their usage. So is 15 between 1 and 86? It is, and so it would in fact be Danny Ainge. And now you're like, well, we ran out of dice rolls figuring out all those things. So how do we now check? What do we use to check whether he actually made the shot or not? Each of these, when you touch them, will actually roll, give you a fresh roll without moving the clock. That's really what you need in this instance. You don't want to hit roll again because it's going to take another 20 seconds off the clock. Every time you hit roll, you should be going to this chart here. And it's like a new possession. Okay, so that's something to just be careful of. When you hit this black button, it's going to take time off the clock. If you need a roll, let's say you're taking 2 free throws and you want to be able to use one of these for free throws, and then you need to shoot a second free throw, you can simply touch the numbers or click on the desktop, click on the dice, and as long as you're touching one or both of these numbers, these dice, then it'll give you a fresh roll. And you can see that we're still at 11 minutes. You can click it all day, right? And the time never changes. Okay, so any of these you can reuse for an extra dice roll. So you just kind of use that at your discretion or however feels comfortable to you. You could technically go along and just use, use the same one for every single roll that you do. Maybe that's how it makes sense to you. So in order to check our shooting, I would just usually come down here, and again, a 2 is between 1 and 51, even after the defender. So that's how you would sort of play fully all the way with defense using this. And if you click roll again, you get 3 fresh ones, and it takes 20 seconds off the clock. So that, again, that's a new possession. So Randy Whitman makes the shot. We have a 10 coming back the other way with the Celtics. 4 to 14 is going to be a turnover. So on a turnover, nothing happens. You simply give possession to the other team. I like to mark turnovers just to keep track of how many are in the game. You can see that the turnover percentage for the Celtics is 11%. And these turnover percentages are roughly accurate. If you do the actual turnover percentages of anywhere between 14 and 20%, you're going to get a lot of turnovers in the game. So I've tried to sort of cut that just a little bit. That's more of an artistic kind of feel of the game after playing it for a while. But you are going to wind up anywhere between 10 and 15 turnovers, probably for each team. If a team has less than 10 turnovers, they have a good chance of winning because there's no wasted possessions, right? It's just back and forth in basketball. So a turnover just takes away your scoring opportunity and gives the other team another one. So when you eliminate turnovers, you can increase scoring, which is also a part of why some of these teams, they just score more. So you can see that they have an 11% chance. They have a 13% chance of a turnover. So that percentage goes up, and it doesn't seem like much. We're sort of like moving and shifting 1, 2, 3, 4% at a time, and that's actually more movement than you think. So this is the application. Let me run it all the way down to the quarter. So again, each time you touch it, it goes down. So that was pretty terrible. Yeah, let me do that again, just so you can see what happens at the end of the quarter. Okay, so when you get to the end of the quarter, you wind up with zeros for your clock. So this is at the actual last possession of the quarter. You have the next quarter here. You can see that we have automatically transitioned to quarter 2 after that first quarter was over. And when we click here, it's automatically going to transition to quarter number 3. So these things just kind of happen behind the scenes so that you don't have to worry about making some of these changes. The app just kind of handles a lot of those things for you. You go back, 12 minutes in the third quarter, and then if we go all the way down to the fourth quarter, we get our last roll, and then we're into the fourth quarter. And if we go all the way past the fourth quarter, you'll see that it transitions again. And you'll have a couple of options when you get to the end of the game. So this is the fourth quarter, no time left on the clock, last possession of the game. You can either go to overtime or you can reset the game. So if you don't need to go to overtime, you would simply reset the game, and it would take you back to the first quarter and would put zeros on the clock and sort of just reset the entire application. But if you need to go to overtime, you can click overtime. You can see that it goes to OT, and you have I should take that off. It's only 5 minutes of overtime that you're supposed to be playing. So then you would click down, and I'll have to update that in the application. It's not a full quarter that you play. And then once you finish overtime, you get the same options. So if you're still tied, you can go to overtime again. Or if the game is finished and one team has won in OT, then you can simply reset the game and it takes everything back to where it was. Now, let's say you had a scoring run, and then you finish off the run, you mark it all down on the score sheet the way that it needs to go. Excuse me, whether you're using individuals or just the team. And we need to take 2 minutes off the clock. But again, if I click on roll, it's going to roll the clock down 20 seconds, which is okay. It's not really the most efficient way to do that. So instead of just continuing to hit roll, you can actually just touch the time and it will take 2 minutes off automatically. So you can see now that we're down to 10 minutes. So every time you touch it, it's going to take 2 minutes off. So if you do a scoring run, and you can do that if you want, you just keep clicking until 2 minutes are off the clock. You could do that each time if you wanted to, or you can just simply come in and touch the clock and it will go down to 2 minutes. And it even rolls over into, well, let me try it again. It even rolls over into the next quarter. So let's say we're at 10:20 and we're at 20 seconds and we hit a scoring run. Well, how do you handle that? What we're going to do is we're going to take 20 seconds off. It's going to roll over into the next quarter, and then it's going to take the other minute and 40 seconds off the clock in order to get to our 2 minutes. But this application does it automatically, so that now you're down to 10:20 in the next quarter whenever you touch that. So if you find yourself with a scoring run and there's less than 2 minutes left in the quarter, it will roll over automatically to the next quarter, then take off however much time you need to take off to sort of complete the scoring run. Now, if you get into the fourth quarter, so now we're in the fourth quarter at 10:20. You can see here, when I touch it, nothing happens, right? Now it's trying to do something else. So in the fourth quarter, I did not do that. So in the fourth quarter, you're going to have to take your scoring runs off by hand. The reason for that was so that the game didn't roll over on you, or maybe you don't want to have scoring runs inside of 2 minutes, something like that. I just wanted to leave sort of into the game situations up to the gamer using the application. So you can use the app to just sort of manually take off the 2 minutes that way. And if you don't want to play scoring runs inside the last 2 minutes, I get it. That's just totally an option for you, and you want them to play it out. If you hit a scoring run, I would just either count it as a turnover or simply roll again and see what happens, right? Because obviously you can click each of these and simulate a roll again without taking more time off the clock. So having those rolls without any clock moving was like a big part of the development of this application. So that's using the Uptempo application. You can find, if you go to the Uptempo website, so it's called Uptempo Basketball Game.com. So if you go to the website, there's a sign here that says, "Is the old app link not working for you?" You can click there and go to the app, or you can scroll all the way down to the bottom. You'll see this section here that looks like the app that we just used, and it tells you a little bit about it, and you can click this and it will simply open up that application on your computer or your phone, whatever it is, and then you'll be able to use it. So you can get that at uptempobasketballgame.com. It's also in the game guide. If you're looking at the PDF version, either online or on a piece of paper, you can just type it in and be sent to that. online dice roller. Very handy, very useful for even speeding up the game even more. Okay, this video is getting